So anyway, this was back in 2006. I was 18, Matt was 19, and we had this dumb idea to get lost in the Sierra Nevada for a weekend. Just the two of us, a tent, and my dad's Ford Explorer that smelled like old coffee in desperation. We drove up on a Friday afternoon. No map, no plan. Just took some random forest road until the pavement ended, then kept going. And then we found it. This little clearing right next to a creek. Pine trees all around, but the spot itself was open. Flat. Perfect. No fire rings, no trash, no footprints. Like nobody had ever been there. I mean, it felt like we had discovered something special, you know? Completely alone. Looking back, I should have realized that finding a place so perfect, so untouched, wasn't luck. It was a trap. But you know how it is when you're 18. You don't think. So we parked the Explorer, hauled the tent out. Blue Coleman, the kind that takes forever to set up. Matt kept cursing because the poles wouldn't snap together. I was just standing there, breathing in the pine smoke from someone else's old fire pit nearby. And the sound of the creek, running water over rocks. It was peaceful. We got the tent up eventually, threw our sleeping bags inside. Then we gathered wood and started a fire. I cracked open a Bud Light. Matt was messing with his iPod, the white one with the click wheel, and he put on Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. That song was everywhere that summer. I remember sitting on a log, watching the flames, and thinking, this is it. This is what people talk about. The perfect night. No cell service, no parents. Just the two of us in the dark trees and the sky full of stars. We stayed up late, just talking. Stupid stuff. Girls, school, what we wanted to do next year. And I remember Matt saying, we should come here every summer, find spots like this. And I agreed. I mean, why wouldn't I? The fire died down to embers. The creek kept running. And somewhere in the dark, an owl called out. Or at least I thought it was an owl. I crawled into the tent, zipped the mesh, and lay there listening to Matt snore. The air smelled like smoke. My hands smelled like dirt. And for a second, I felt something cold at the back of my neck, like someone was watching from the tree line. But I was tired and warm, and I told myself it, and then we woke up. I mean, the sun was already high, cutting through the tent walls. Matt unzipped his sleeping bag and groaned about his back. You know how it is when you sleep on the ground. Everything hurts. We made coffee on the little propane stove. Nothing fancy, just instant stuff in chipped mugs. And then we decided to go explore. That's what you do on these trips, right? You walk around. You pretend you're a wilderness guy. So we headed into the trees. No trail, just following the creek upstream. And I remember noticing something weird pretty quick. The silence. Like, not quiet. Silence. No birds, no squirrels. Just the water and our footsteps on pine needles. I told myself it was nothing. Like, probably just the time of day. We walked for maybe 20 minutes. The trees got thicker. The light got darker. And then we saw this gap in the rocks. A cave opening. Not huge, just a dark slit in the hillside. Maybe big enough to crawl through if you wanted. Matt joked that a bear lived in there. I laughed. But then we both stopped. Because we heard something. A rustle. Coming from inside. Not loud, but clear. Like fabric moving against stone. Or something dragging. And then voices. Muffled voices. Low. Not words exactly. More like murmuring. Like people talking in a room with the door closed. I looked at Matt. He looked at me. Neither of us moved for a second. And then he whispered that it was probably just the wind, echoing weird. Or maybe a small animal stuck in there. I wanted to believe him. I mean, that makes sense, right? Caves do weird things with sound. So I nodded, and I said, "Yeah, probably." We stood there for another minute. The rustle stopped. The voices stopped. Just silence again. And then we turned around and walked back to camp. But here's the thing. The whole way back, I kept looking over my shoulder, and Matt was walking faster than before. Neither of us talked about it. Like, we just pretended it didn't happen. We got to the tent. The fire was dead. The creek was still running. Everything looked normal. But I couldn't stop thinking about those voices. They didn't sound like wind. They didn't sound like animals. I guess that's when the fear started. Not the screaming kind. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and grows while you pretend everything's fine. And then, late that afternoon, Matt looked at me and said he wanted to go back to the cave with the flashlights. I should have said no. I should have trusted that feeling. But Matt kept pushing. And I didn't want to look like a coward. So we grabbed the mag lights, the big 3-cell ones, metal, heavy. And then we went back. The cave entrance looked smaller than I remembered, darker, like the light didn't want to go inside. But Matt went first, because of course he did. And I followed. And then we were in. The air changed immediately. Cold. Damp. That smell of rot, like wet leaves and something dead underneath. My breathing got loud, echoed off the walls. We shone the lights around, just rock, more rock. A tunnel sloping down. Not wide, but tall enough to stand. The voices started again. Faint, from deeper in. I told myself maybe it was water dripping, maybe echoes from outside. But it didn't sound like water. It sounded like muttering, like several people whispering at once. Not a language I knew, just sounds. Matt whispered that we should keep going. I wanted to leave, but I didn't say that. So we walked. Slow, careful. The floor was dirt and pebbles at first, and then it changed. Crack. I stepped on something, looked down. My light showed white shapes, bones, small ones, ribs maybe. A skull the size of my fist. Rabbit or bird. There were dozens of them, scattered everywhere, crunching under our boots like dry twigs. Matt said maybe it was just a deer carcass. Animals drag stuff into caves, right? But these bones were too small and too many. The rot smell got stronger. The voices got louder. And then we saw it. Movement. At the edge of my light. Something large. Darker than the dark. Shifting. Not a person. Not an animal I knew. I couldn't breathe. My own breathing was so loud in my ears. And then the movement stopped. And something turned. I didn't wait. I just ran. Matt was right behind me. We didn't speak, just scrambled up the tunnel, scraping our hands on the rock walls. I felt my skin tear. Didn't care. We burst out into the daylight, blinking, gasping. And then I looked down at my boots. Gray dust, powder, mixed with tiny bone fragments. I looked back at the cave entrance. Dark, silent. And then I heard it again. A crack from inside, like something stepping toward the light. I ran. But yeah, we ran, all the way back to camp. My chest was burning, my hands were bleeding from the rocks. Matt kept looking behind us. I didn't. I was too scared to see what might be following. The sun was already going down, that golden light before dusk. And I remember thinking, how is the world still normal? How are the trees still just trees? Then we saw the tent. We saw something red, from maybe 50 yards away. And my brain didn't understand at first. The tent was blue. Coleman, My dad's old one from 2005. We set it up right there by the creek. But it wasn't blue anymore. We got closer and closer, and then we stopped. The whole tent was covered. Red. Bright red. Like someone dumped buckets of paint all over it. Dripping down the sides, pooling on the ground, and on the front flap, written in big letters, "Leave." The smell hit me. Metallic, sharp, like licking a rusty nail. Not blood. Paint. Industrial paint. Still wet. Silence. I mean, no crickets, no birds, no wind, just the creek. And that silence felt louder than any sound I've ever heard. Matt whispered something. I couldn't understand him. I reached out and touched the fabric. The paint came off of my fingers. Sticky. Fresh. Someone had done this minutes ago, while we were in the cave. I looked around. Trees, shadows, nothing moving, no footprints in the dirt that I could see. Matt said maybe it was just some teenagers. But we were miles from anywhere. Miles. No road, no trail. How would teenagers even find this spot? I said that, out loud. And Matt just stared at me. And then we both realized, whoever did this knew we were here. Knew we left the camp. Knew exactly when to come. The silence broke. A branch snapped somewhere in the trees behind us. I didn't look. I just grabbed Matt's arm and whispered that we had to go. Now. He nodded. We didn't pack anything. Left the tent. Left the sleeping bags. Left everything. And as we ran to the Explorer, I swear I heard footsteps. Not ours. Someone else's. Crashing through the brush. But when I turned my head, nothing. Just dark trees. And the smell of paint on my fingers. So anyway, we didn't think. We just moved. Grabbed the keys from Matt's pocket. Grabbed our phones. Our backpacks were already by the tent, so we snatched those too. The tent we left. The sleeping bags, the stove, the cooler with the last few Bud Lights. All of it. Just red and dripping, and the word leave stuck in my head. We ran. Twilight was already turning everything gray. The trees looked like hands reaching out. I kept my eyes on the ground. Just run. Don't look back. But then I heard it. Footsteps on gravel. Behind us. Not ours. Ours were soft on pine needles. These were sharp. Crunching. Someone was back there. I turned my head. Nothing. Just shadows and more shadows. Matt was ahead of me. Breathing hard. He didn't look back. I guess he was smarter than me. The footsteps stopped. Then started again. Closer. I wanted to scream, but my throat was tight. So I just ran faster. We hit the clearing. The Ford Explorer was right there, blue, dirty, the same as we left it. I fumbled with the keys, dropped them, picked them up. Matt yelled at me to hurry. The footsteps were still behind us, somewhere in the trees. I got the door open. We both jumped in. I shoved the key in the ignition. The engine turned over, once, twice. And then it started. I didn't wait. Just threw it in reverse, spun the wheels, and hit the dirt road. Matt was looking in the side mirror. His face was white. I looked in the rear view. Between the trees, shapes, dark, moving, not running, just standing, watching. I blinked. They were gone. Matt said it was just adrenaline. You see things when you're scared. I nodded, but I didn't believe him. We drove for 2 hours. No music, no talking, just the road and the headlights and the gas gauge dropping. The needle was below E. I remembered my dad telling me the Explorer had a 5-gallon reserve. But that was for emergencies, and I guess this counted. We passed signs for Lone Pine. Matt said we should stop, find a bar, ask someone what the hell was happening. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep driving until California ended. But the gas was almost gone. and my hands were still shaking. So I pulled into the first parking lot I saw, a place called the Rusty Nail. Neon sign, old trucks outside. And then I heard it again, a crunch, behind the car. I looked in the mirror. Nothing, just dark. But the sound kept playing in my head. We sat there for a minute, just breathing. The parking lot was dark. The bar sign buzzed. Matt finally said we should go inside. I didn't want to, but my hands were still shaking, and I needed something strong. So we went in. The Rusty Nail was exactly what you'd expect. Old wood, sticky floor, a few guys at the bar not looking up. The place smelled like whiskey and cigarettes and something sour under it all. We sat down. The bartender came over. Older guy, maybe 60. Gray beard, a scar on his cheekbone, white and shiny like old plastic. He didn't smile. Matt ordered 2 Jack Daniels. Neat. The bartender poured without a word. The clink of the glass on the wood sounded too loud. I downed mine in one sip, burned my throat. Good. The bartender just stood there, wiping a glass, watching us. Then he said, "Rough night?" I looked at Matt. Matt looked at me. And then I just started talking. The cave, the bones, the red paint, the word leave, everything. The bartender didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. And then he sighed, leaned on the bar, and he said, "You're lucky to be alive." I asked him what he meant. He said those mountains belong to people who don't like visitors, gangs. Not the kind you see in movies, the kind that live off-grid, grow stuff, move stuff, and they don't want anyone finding their spots. He said the red paint was a warning, not a threat, a promise. Leave means you get one chance. Next time, it's not paint. I asked if we should call the police. He laughed, dry, mean, and then he said, "There's no police out there. And even if there were, some of them are the same people." Matt asked how he knew all this. The bartender just looked at us, and then he said, "Because I've seen it before. Every couple years. Someone comes in looking like you two. Pale, shaking. Some of them go back. Most don't." He poured himself a shot, drank it. Then he said, "Don't go back. Don't talk about this. Don't tell anyone where you were, and if you see red again, run." I asked if they follow people. He didn't answer, just walked away to the other end of the bar. And then I realized he seemed too calm about it. Like he knew more than he was saying, like maybe he wasn't just a bartender. The glass in my hand was empty. The bar was quiet. And somewhere outside, I thought I heard footsteps on gravel. But I told myself it was nothing. We made it back to LA. Drove all night. Didn't sleep. Matt crashed at my place because he said he didn't want to be alone. I didn't blame him. But yeah, after a few days, things got quiet. Too quiet. I kept telling myself it was over. We left. We're safe. But I couldn't sleep. Every night I lay there listening. My apartment's on the first floor. Big window facing the street, old building, thin walls. And I kept hearing footsteps. Outside, on the sidewalk, stopping. I'd get up, look through the blinds. Nothing, just dark. Matt called me a week later. His voice was weird. He asked if I'd had anything strange happen. I said no. Then he told me someone had scratched his front door. At night, deep gouges in the wood. He said he heard it around 3 a.m. I told him maybe it was just kids from the neighborhood. But I didn't believe that, and neither did he. Then yesterday morning, I opened my door to leave for work. And there it was, a small red spot on the concrete step. Fresh, still wet, paint, metallic smell. The same color. I froze. Looked up and down the street. Nobody. Just parked cars and a cat on a fence. I called Matt. He didn't answer. I left a message. He called back an hour later, said he found red paint on his back porch, and he hadn't told anyone our address. We both went quiet on the phone, and then Matt whispered, "They followed us." I wanted to say no. I wanted to say it was random, coincidence. But the word leave wasn't a warning, it was a promise. So anyway, last night I didn't sleep at all. I sat on my couch with the lights off, just listening. And then I heard it, scratching, at my front door. Slow, deliberate. I grabbed my phone, started to call Matt. And then I heard footsteps, moving, past the door to the window. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The scratching stopped. The footsteps stopped. And now, right now, I hear something outside my door again. A rustle, like fabric moving against wood. And I'm whispering this because so anyway, back in 2009, I thought I had it all figured out. I mean, I was dating this girl, Sarah, and she was beautiful, funny, everything. You know how it is when you're young and dumb. We decided to drive up to this remote campsite in Rhode Island. Nothing fancy, just a tent, some beer, and a weekend away from everyone. I remember we took my Ford Focus. The thing was a piece of junk, but it ran. And Sarah had her playlist on, Kings of Leon, Use Somebody. She was singing along, her feet on the dashboard, and the windows were down. The smell of pine was so strong it almost burned. What I didn't know was that the person I trusted most was about to become the source of my nightmares. We got there around sunset. Found a spot deep in the woods, away from the main loop. I mean, it was perfect. Quiet, just the two of us. We set up the tent, built a small fire, and cooked some hot dogs. She was laughing, throwing sticks at me. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the good life. Later, we crawled into the tent. The air was cold, but we had sleeping bags zipped together. She fell asleep almost instantly, her head on my chest. I stayed up a little longer, just listening. You know that sound? The rustle of leaves when there's no wind? I heard it. A soft rustle like something moving just outside the firelight. I told myself it was probably just a raccoon. That's what you're supposed to think, right? But I didn't get up. I just pulled the sleeping bag tighter and closed my eyes. And I remember thinking, we'll pack up in the morning, drive home, maybe stop for breakfast. I didn't know then that morning would never come. Not the way I expected. The last thing I heard before falling asleep was that rustle again. Closer this time. And then nothing. Just the silence of the woods and the smell of pine. When I opened my eyes next, everything was gone. And then I opened my eyes. And like, holy crap. I sat up in the sleeping bag, and at first I didn't understand what I was seeing. The tent was half collapsed. Sunlight was slicing through a big tear in the fabric. I called out for Sarah. She was already standing outside. I could see her shadow through the mesh. I crawled out. And then I just froze. The campsite was destroyed. I mean, completely trashed. Our cooler was overturned, hot dogs and buns scattered everywhere. A Gatorade bottle was crushed on the ground, bright orange, split open, bags of chips torn apart. And the car, my Ford Focus, the windows were smashed. Both side windows. Glass all over the ground. It cracked under my feet when I stepped. Crack, crack, crack. Sarah was just standing there, shaking. She wasn't saying anything, just staring at the trees. I looked around for footprints. Nothing. The ground was dry, hard-packed. No tire tracks, no boot prints. Just our own from the night before. Our clothes. I saw my hoodie hanging from a bush. Her jeans were wrapped around a branch 20 feet away, like someone had thrown them there. And then I noticed the silence. No birds, no wind, just that heavy, dead silence that makes your ears ring. She finally spoke. She whispered that we needed to leave. But then she grabbed my arm and said we couldn't drive. She pointed at the car. The tires were fine, but she kept saying something about the engine. I told her the engine didn't matter if the windows were smashed. We could still drive. She started crying, hysterical, like not normal crying. Her breath was coming in short gasps. She kept saying someone was out there, someone did this, they might come back. I told her it was probably some drunk kids from the nearby site, I guess. That's what I wanted to believe. I mean, there was a group of guys a quarter-mile down the fire road. They had been loud the night before. Maybe they got bored. Maybe they thought it was funny. But then I looked closer at the car. The windows were broken from the inside. The glass was pushed outward. I didn't say that to her. I just stood there, trying to make it make sense. Sarah grabbed the crushed Gatorade bottle and threw it into the woods. She said we should stay put. Wait for someone to come. I asked her who would come. We were miles from the main road, no cell service. And the phones, oh God, the phones were in the tent. I turned to go get them. And that's when I heard it. A loud crack from deep in the trees, like a branch snapping under something heavy. We both turned to look. Nothing moved, but the silence got deeper. And Sarah's hand was ice cold on my arm. She whispered that we shouldn't go looking, that we should just wait. I didn't argue. But in the back of my head, something wasn't right. Drunk kids don't leave without leaving footprints, and they don't break windows from the inside. I didn't say that out loud. I just stood there, listening to the silence and wondering what the hell we were waiting for. But yeah, she kept saying we couldn't leave. That was the first red flag, and I just ignored it. I asked her why. The car still ran. The engine turned over fine. I checked it myself. The windows were smashed, sure, but the Focus started right up. Sarah grabbed my wrist and told me it wasn't safe to drive with all the glass. She said we might get a flat tire or something in the engine. I told her we could sweep the glass off the seat. It wasn't that bad. But she shook her head. Then she started crying again. Then, like 5 minutes later, she stopped. Completely. Just wiped her face and sat down on a log. Her mood swung so fast it made my head spin. She looked at me with this eerie calm and said we should wait for the ranger. Someone would come. They always did. I asked her how. No phones, no radio. The ranger station was closed for the season. I knew that because we passed the sign on the way in. She just shrugged. She kept playing with her necklace, a vintage compass thing she always wore, turning it over and over in her fingers. The metal caught the light. I told myself she was just scared, that's all. People don't think straight when they're scared. I was scared too, but not like her. She wasn't looking for a way out. She was looking at the trees like she was expecting something. I started cleaning up the campsite, picking up the broken glass, putting the food back in the cooler. She just sat there, watching me, not helping. Every few minutes, she'd whisper something. I couldn't quite hear it. Just a whisper. Soft, like she was talking to herself. The smell of damp earth was strong. It had rained a little overnight, and the ground was wet under the pine needles. I remember thinking that was weird. If it rained, why wasn't the tent wet inside? But I let it go. Sarah finally stood up. She walked over to the car and just stood there, staring at the broken windows. Then she smiled. She actually smiled. And she said, maybe this was a good thing. a test. She said if we could get through this, we could get through anything. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kept cleaning. Later, I tried to get her to walk with me to the main road, just to see if we could flag down a car. She refused, said it wasn't safe to split up, said we should stay together. Stay put, I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were dry now. Her breathing was normal. She was calm, too calm, and she wasn't scared anymore. That's what got me. She was waiting. I asked her what she was waiting for. She just touched her compass necklace and whispered that I'd understand soon. Then she turned and walked back to the log, sat down, crossed her arms, and stared at the tree line like something was about to step out of it. The silence came back, heavy, wrong. And I realized I hadn't heard a single bird since we woke up. Not one. Sarah smiled again and whispered something I couldn't quite catch. But it sounded like my name. You know, at first I thought maybe I was just tired. That's what I kept telling myself. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. The sun was getting higher, and we'd been out there for hours. I hadn't eaten anything, neither had Sarah. She just sat on that log, watching me clean up. I decided to grab our phones. We had put them in a Ziploc bag the night before. Sarah's idea. She said she didn't want them to get damp from the ground, so I zipped them inside that bag and tucked it in the corner of the tent. I crawled back into the tent. The fabric was torn, and sunlight was coming through in thin slits. I felt around for the bag, found it, pulled it out. And then I just sat there. The bag was full of broken plastic and glass. The phones were smashed, both of them. The screens were spiderwebbed. Pieces of the casing were loose inside the bag. A metallic smell came out when I opened the zipper, like copper, like blood almost. I dumped the pieces onto the tent floor. They made a soft, clicking sound. Metallic clicks. I picked up what was left of my phone. The battery was bent. The SIM card had fallen out. These phones were inside the tent, in a Ziploc bag, zipped shut. No one had come into the tent. I knew that because the tent zipper was stuck when we woke up. I had to force it open. And the bag was still zipped when I found it. I heard footsteps outside. Sarah. She was walking toward the tent. I stuffed the pieces back into the bag and crawled out. She asked me what I was doing. I said I was looking for the phones. She said they were probably outside somewhere. The vandals must have taken them. I told her I couldn't find them. She didn't say anything to that, just nodded and walked back to the log. I sat on the cooler and stared at the tent. My brain was trying to make it fit. Maybe I remembered wrong. Maybe we left them out. Maybe someone unzipped the tent, took the bag, smashed the phones, and put the bag back. But why? And why would they zip the bag back up? And the tent zipper was stuck from the inside. I had to push the fabric to get it open. None of it made sense. I looked at Sarah. She was humming. Something soft. I couldn't tell what song. She was looking at the trees again. But she wasn't scared. She was peaceful, like she was waiting for something good to happen. I asked her if she remembered putting the phones in the bag. She said yes. I asked her if she remembered zipping the tent. She said yes. Then she turned to me and asked why I was asking so many questions. I said I was just trying to figure out what happened. She smiled, that same calm smile. And she said maybe nothing happened. Maybe we just needed a reason to stay. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But I looked back at the tent, at the broken glass on the ground, at the car with its windows pushed outward, and I heard footsteps again. But they weren't Sarah's. They were behind me, coming from the trees. I spun around No one was there. The footsteps stopped. And Sarah whispered that I should sit down, that I was making her nervous. I sat down, but I kept looking at the trees, and I kept thinking about that Ziploc bag, zipped shut, full of broken phones. No one else had been inside that tent. No one except us. So anyway, I just stood there for a while, holding the Ziploc bag full of broken phones, looking at Sarah. She was still sitting on that log, humming. I walked over to her. I didn't say anything at first. I just dropped the bag at her feet. She looked down at it, then up at me. Her face didn't change. I asked her how the phones got smashed inside the tent, inside a zipped bag. She shrugged and said she didn't know. I asked her again. She said maybe I did it in my sleep. I told her that didn't make sense. She stood up and told me to stop yelling. I wasn't even yelling. That's when I noticed her flannel shirt, the one she was wearing last night. It was torn at the sleeve, fresh tear, and there was a small cut on her hand, dried blood. I asked her how she got hurt. She pulled her sleeve down and said she didn't remember. I tried to find another explanation, but there wasn't one. I mean, I stood there running through every possibility. Someone else, a stranger, an animal. But no, the phones were in the tent. The tent was zipped. The bag was zipped. Only 2 people had access, me and her, and I knew I didn't do it. The silence stretched out. I could smell something rotten, like wet leaves that had been sitting too long. It was coming from behind her, from the bushes where she had thrown the Gatorade bottle earlier. But that didn't make sense either. Sarah sighed. Then she sat back down. She looked at her hands, and she just started talking. She said she did it. All of it. The car windows, the food, the clothes in the trees, the phones. She smashed everything. She used a rock, wrapped it in her flannel shirt so she wouldn't cut herself too bad. But she still got cut. I asked her why. My voice came out flat, hollow, like I was asking about the weather. She said she was scared. She said she had been thinking about it for weeks. She was convinced I was going to dump her on this trip. She said I had been distant, that I didn't look at her the same way, that she could feel it coming. I told her I wasn't going to dump her. I had no plans to. None. She shook her head. She said it didn't matter what I planned. She felt it. And she couldn't stand the thought of driving home in silence, knowing it was over. So she decided to make something happen, something that would bring us together. She wanted me to save her, to protect her. She thought if we had to survive something, I would remember why I loved her. A branch snapped somewhere in the woods. Loud, close. Neither of us turned to look. She just kept talking. She said she didn't mean to break the car windows so badly. She just got angry. She said she threw my hoodie into the tree because I had worn it on a date with my ex 2 years ago. She remembered that. She remembered everything. I asked her about the phones. She said she smashed them so I couldn't call anyone. So we were stuck together. She said she wanted it to be just us. No outside world, no distractions. She looked at me then, really looked. And she said she just wanted me to hold her, to tell her everything was going to be okay. But I couldn't. I just stood there. My mouth was open. Nothing came out. She started crying again, soft, not hysterical this time. She whispered that she was sorry, that she loved me, that she only did it because she was terrified of losing me. I didn't say anything. And then she smiled, through the tears. She smiled and said, now we had a story, a real story, something to look back on and laugh. I heard another snap. Closer. She stopped smiling. She looked past me, toward the trees, and she whispered that someone was watching us. I turned around. No one was there. But I smelled rot again. Stronger now, and something else. Something sour. When I turned back, Sarah was holding the rock, the one she used to smash the windows. It was covered in dried glass dust. She said she wasn't sorry anymore. I guess we got in the car. I don't really remember deciding to leave. I just remember sitting in the driver's seat, my hands on the wheel, and Sarah next to me. She had put the rock down somewhere. I didn't ask where. The drive back was silent. I mean, completely silent. No radio, no talking. Just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the occasional crack of a pebble hitting the windshield. That sound. Crack. Over and over. I stopped at a rest stop about 20 miles in. There was a small convenience store. I went inside, bought 2 coffee milks. It's a Rhode Island thing. Sweet, creamy, weird. I don't even like them. But I bought them anyway. I guess I needed to do something normal. When I came back to the car, Sarah was sitting exactly how I left her. Hands in her lap, looking out the window. I handed her the coffee milk. She took it. Didn't say thank you. Didn't look at me. I got back in. We drove. She acted like nothing had happened. That was the strangest part. No apology, no explanation, no tears. Just silence and the occasional sip from that little carton. I kept waiting for her to say something. Anything. But she didn't, and then... But yeah, I started to feel foggy. Like I was watching myself from outside the car. Like none of it was real. The broken windows, the confession, the rock in her hand. It all felt like a movie I had seen once, a long time ago. I tried to tell myself she'll calm down once we're home. That was the lie I needed. That was the false trail my brain built to keep me from falling apart. She'll calm down. We'll talk. It'll be fine. But I didn't believe it. Not really. We pulled into her apartment complex around dinner time. The sun was low, long shadows. She got out of the car, didn't wait for me. I got out too, walked her to the door. I don't know why. Habit, I guess. She turned around, kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were cold, and she said, "See you tomorrow." Then she went inside. The door clicked shut. I heard the lock turn. Something sour rose in my throat. I stood there for a minute, maybe longer. I never saw her again. Not the next day, not the week after, not ever. I drove home that night in the dark, the smell of coffee milk still in the car, sweet and sour at the same time. And I remember thinking, she said, "See you tomorrow." She kissed me on the cheek. She acted like nothing happened. But something had happened. And the crack of the tires on the road sounded exactly like the snap of a branch back in those woods. Exactly like it. I mean, like, you know how it is when someone just disappears from your life? Not physically. They're still out there, still breathing, but they block you everywhere. Phone, social media, email, all of it, just gone. That's what Sarah did. The next morning, I texted her. Didn't go through, called. Straight to voicemail, checked Facebook, blocked, Instagram, blocked, everything. I didn't understand. She said, "See you tomorrow." She kissed me on the cheek, and then nothing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came a few days later. I started getting calls from our mutual friends. Strange calls, quiet voices. They asked me if I was okay, if I needed help, if I had seen a doctor. I asked them what they were talking about. Turns out Sarah had been busy. She told everyone that I lost my mind in the woods, said I trashed our campsite, smashed the car, threw our clothes in the trees, broke our phones. She said I scared her so badly she thought I was going to hurt her. She said she had to pretend everything was fine just to get home safe. And they believed her. I mean, of course they did. She was crying when she told them, shaking, the perfect victim. And me? I had no proof, no texts, no recordings, just my word against hers. I tried to explain, told them she confessed, told them about the rock, the Ziploc bag, the torn flannel shirt. They just looked at me different after that, like I was dangerous, like I was the crazy one. So anyway, I lost most of my friends that year. Sarah won. She always won. Fast forward to 2015. I'm married now. Different woman, different car. But the fear never left. My wife wants to go camping. She thinks it's romantic. A weekend in the woods, a tent, a fire. I can't do it. I've tried to explain. I've told her about Sarah, about the campsite, about the broken phones and the silence and the smell of rot. She listens. She nods. But I can see it in her eyes. She doesn't understand. She thinks I'm being dramatic. She thinks I should just get over it. But I hear things. At night, when the house is quiet, a rustle outside the window, leaves maybe, or something else. And I freeze every time. I don't know where Sarah is now. I don't want to know. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone, I think I see her car. Same model, same color. Pulling up next to me at a red light. I hold my breath. I don't look. The light turns green. The car drives away. And I'm left there, in the silence, wondering if she's still telling people I'm the monster. She is. She always will be. And me? I still can't go camping. I was 24 years old, fresh out of university in Vienna, and I thought I knew everything about the outdoors. So anyway, I saved up for months to fly to the States. First time ever in America. Rented a Ford Explorer, 2008 model, tan interior, smelled like cigarettes and pine air freshener. I mean, I felt like a real adventurer. Drove all the way from Pittsburgh to the Appalachian Trailhead, listening to my iPod Classic on shuffle. Mr. Brightside came on, and I remember singing along, rolling down the window, breathing in that cold October air. I didn't know that the last normal sleep I'd ever have was already behind me. The ranger at the station tried to warn me. Older guy, gray beard, looked at my map and said, "Stick to the marked path, son. People go missing when they wander off." I just nodded and smiled. But yeah, in my head I was thinking, these Americans are so dramatic. I'd hiked the Alps alone, camped near Innsbruck in February. What could a forest in Virginia possibly do to me? So anyway, by noon I was on the trail. By 4 p.m. I was bored. The official path was clean, well marked, full of little plastic signs. Too easy. I saw a game trail branching off into deeper woods, and I figured, why not? That's where the real experience is. I mean, that's what I told myself. I hiked maybe another 2 hours inland. No signs, no people, just trees and more trees. The light started turning golden. I found a small clearing near a creek and set up my tent. Cheap 2-person dome tent, bright blue. Made a little fire ring with stones. The crack of dry twigs as I broke them for kindling. That sharp snap that echoes in the silence. And the smell of pine needles warming up in the last sun. I opened a can of chili, heated it over the stove, ate straight from the pot. I remember lying in my sleeping bag, scrolling through the iPod. 9 p.m. The forest was quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves. I figured it's just a bit of adventure, you know. Nothing scarier than a squirrel out here. That was my false lead, my brain trying to be rational. I zipped the tent closed, left the mesh open to see the stars, and closed my eyes. The last thing I thought before I fell asleep was, these Americans are so soft, scared of their own shadow. Then I woke up to footsteps. I woke up and didn't know where I was. For a second, just dark and cold. Then the smell of pine came back. Right, the tent, the forest. I guess I'd been out for maybe 3 or 4 hours. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching leaves somewhere outside. I froze with my eyes open, staring at the mesh ceiling. The stars were gone, just black. I pressed the light on my Casio watch. 3:17 a.m. The green glow felt too bright. I turned it off fast, and then the footsteps came again, closer this time. I mean, you know how in movies footsteps sound dramatic? This was worse because it was real. One step, pause. Another step. Someone was walking around my tent. I told myself, probably just a deer or a coyote. Yeah, that's it. A coyote sniffing around. But then the steps kept going, in a circle. I could hear them moving from my left to behind me to my right. The same crunch, 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 around and around. I sat up slowly, reached for the hunting knife I'd left next to my sleeping bag. My hands were shaking. I guess I whispered something to myself. Don't remember what. Maybe just please. The footsteps stopped, right in front of the tent door. I could see the shape of something through the mesh, not clear, just a darker shadow against the dark. And then I heard a sound that didn't make sense. A whisper, but not words. More like breathing that turned into a hum. Then a low, soft howl. Not like a wolf, like a person trying to sound like one. It went up and down, just under the wind. I covered my mouth with both hands. The knife was useless. I couldn't move. The whisper got louder, and then I realized it wasn't one voice. It was 2, maybe 3. They were saying something in rhythm, but I couldn't understand the words. Sounded like another language, or maybe just sounds. The footsteps started again. Same circle, same pace. I counted. 1 full circle, 2, 3. Each time they passed the front of the tent, the whisper got a little louder. My heart was slamming so hard I thought they could hear it. On the 4th circle, the footsteps stopped again, right at the door. The whisper stopped too. And then something tapped the outside of the tent. Once, right where my head was. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. Silence for maybe 10 seconds. Then a voice, clear, male, close, said 2 words right through the fabric. You're awake. I didn't move. Couldn't. That voice said, you're awake, and then nothing. Just the dark and the smell of pine and my own sweat. But yeah, I waited for maybe a minute, 2 minutes. No footsteps, no whisper. Just the ringing in my ears. Then the voice came again, louder this time. And it wasn't talking to me anymore. It was shouting. If you come out, you will die. The words were clear, slow, a male voice, deep, no accent, like someone announcing something on a PA system. And then other voices joined in, a chorus, maybe 4 or 5 people, all saying the same thing at the same time. If you come out, you will die. Over and over, like a chant, like a warning. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the sound went right through. The crack of a gunshot cut through the chanting, then another, and then a whole series of them. Pop, 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 pop. Not like a pistol. I remembered watching war movies as a kid. That sound of a shotgun being pumped and fired. A 12 gauge. But yeah, I'm no expert. It just sounded heavy. Final. The shouting got louder. People yelling at each other. I heard branches snapping. A man screamed to stop. And then the scream cut off, like someone turned off a radio, then more gunshots, then a thud, something heavy hitting the ground. The metallic smell hit me then. Not just gunpowder, something else. Something sour and sweet at the same time, like old pennies in iron. I pulled my sleeping bag over my head, like a kid hiding from a nightmare. I was shaking so hard the tent poles rattled. And then the voices came back, right outside the door, not shouting anymore, whispering again. But this time I could understand every word. Don't come out, don't come out, don't you come out. A different voice added, stay in the bag, stay quiet, stay alive. Then the first voice, the deep one, said something that made my blood go cold. He said, and I remember this exactly, he said, he's listening. Good, let him listen. And then silence. Not the kind of silence where things are quiet. The kind where you realize every cricket, every owl, every living thing has stopped making noise. The forest was dead. Absolutely dead. I lay there for what felt like hours. I tried to tell myself it was just hunters having a night shoot. But that's illegal at 3 a.m. Or maybe a drunk fight between locals. But the chanting didn't sound drunk. It sounded rehearsed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened to my own heart and waited for the next sound. And then I heard footsteps again. Coming closer. Not walking around the tent this time. Coming straight for the zipper. I don't know how long I lay there after the footsteps stopped. I lost all sense of time. My watch was buried under the sleeping bag. I didn't want to look. Didn't want to see that green light again. The silence was the worst part. Not the quiet before a storm. Just nothing. No wind, no crickets, no owls. Like the forest had held its breath and forgotten to let go. I listened so hard my ears started ringing. A high, thin sound that wasn't real. Just my brain filling the empty space. I kept waiting for another gunshot, another shout, another whisper at the zipper. But nothing came. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. I tried to tell myself it was all a nightmare. Like I really tried. I pinched my arm hard enough to leave a bruise. But I was still there. Still in the tent. Still awake. The smell of damp earth started seeping through the mesh. That wet, cold smell of dew settling on dead leaves. I remember thinking, that's real. That's too real for a dream. Slowly, I noticed the darkness changing. Not getting lighter exactly. Just less black, more gray. Like someone was turning up a dimmer switch somewhere far away. I risked a look at the watch. 5:52 a.m., almost sunrise. I hadn't slept, not a single second after those voices. My eyes were dry. My throat was raw from breathing so quietly. And I still felt like someone was watching me. Not from outside the tent, from inside. Like the air itself had eyes. The silence continued. No birds, no wind. Just my heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Too loud? I swear it echoed off the tent walls. By 6:30, the mesh was glowing gray. I could see the shape of the trees outside. Fog. Thick, low fog hugging the ground. The temperature had dropped. I could see my breath, little puffs of white in the cold air. I lay there for another 10 minutes. 15, telling myself to move. But my body wouldn't listen. Every time I thought about reaching for the zipper, I heard that voice again. If you come out, you will die. But the sun was coming up. The fog was burning off. And nothing had happened for hours. Maybe they were gone. Maybe it was over. I took a breath. A deep one. The air smelled like wet dirt and pine. No gunpowder anymore. No blood. Just morning. I mean, I had to look, right? I couldn't stay in that tent forever. So I sat up. My back screamed, my legs were numb. I pushed the sleeping bag aside. The knife was still in my hand. I didn't remember grabbing it again. I looked at the zipper. It was still closed, still fastened. No one had opened it. I reached out. My fingers touched the cold metal pull. And then I heard it. A single sound, close. Behind the tent, a twig snapped. I yanked the zipper down. Fast, too fast. The tent door flopped open, and I stumbled out into the gray morning light. The fog was thick, maybe knee-high. Cold air hit my face. The smell of rot hit me right after. That sweet, sick smell of wet leaves breaking down. Dead vegetation. I stood there, knife still in my hand, waiting for something to jump out. Nothing. Just trees and mist. Then I looked down. The grass around my tent was flattened, not just walked on, destroyed. Mud and torn up roots. A circle maybe 30 feet across, like someone had stomped the same path over and over. The ground was churned up like a field after a storm, and the branches on the low bushes snapped clean off. Some of them had deep gashes, long cuts that could have been from an axe or bullets. I don't know, I'm not an expert. But yeah, I started walking around the circle. My legs felt like rubber. Every step, the mud sucked at my boots. The fog moved around my ankles like it was alive. And then I saw the fire pit. It was about 15 feet from my tent, maybe 20. A ring of stones I didn't put there. Inside, wet ash and half-burned logs, still smoking a little. The smell of something sour cut through the rot. I bent down. There was a 6-pack of Budweiser sitting on a flat rock next to the pit. 3 cans left in the plastic rings. 1 can had been opened and tipped over. Beer had soaked into the dirt. Another can was crushed flat, like someone had stepped on it. I picked up the crushed can. The aluminum was cold and wet with dew. Budweiser, the same red label you see at every gas station in America. So anyway, that's when my brain started trying to fix things. I told myself, okay kids, just local kids. They came out here to drink and party. They heard me in the tent and decided to mess with me. The chanting was just drunk pranks, the gunshots, firecrackers, or maybe they had a shotgun for coyotes. People do that, right? But then I looked at the ground again. The trampled circle wasn't random. It was perfect. A path worn into the mud, like someone had walked the same loop for hours. And the chanting, kids don't chant. If you come out, you will die in perfect unison. They laugh. They giggle. These voices didn't laugh. I stood up and walked to the edge of the clearing. The cuts on the tree trunks were fresh. The sap was still wet. Deep grooves in the bark, maybe 2 feet off the ground. Too low for a bullet, too precise for an axe. I ran my finger along one. The wood was splintered. No blood, no bodies, no shell casings. No footprints except my own and the muddled mess in the circle. I mean, nothing. Just beer, ash, and torn up earth. I turned back to my tent. The blue fabric looked ridiculous now. A bright little target in the middle of that gray, rotting circle. That's when I heard it. A branch snapping, not far, maybe 50 yards into the trees. I spun around. The fog was too thick to see anything. I whispered to myself, maybe an animal. But then I heard another snap, closer. So anyway, I didn't wait to find out. I didn't think, I just moved. And then I grabbed the tent pole and tried to pull it out of the ground. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get a grip. The metal was cold and wet. I yanked again, nothing. The pole slipped. I fell backward into the mud. The snap came again. Closer, maybe 30 yards. Branches breaking. Something moving through the undergrowth. Heavy. Slow. I left the tent, just left it. I grabbed my Osprey backpack, the green one, the expensive one I'd saved months for, and I ran. Didn't zip the tent, didn't grab the sleeping bag, didn't even put on my boots. Just my socks and the knife still in my hand. The rustle of leaves under my feet was so loud. Every step crunched and snapped. I sounded like a stampede, but I couldn't slow down. I crashed through the trees, branches whipping my face. One cut my cheek. I felt the blood, warm then cold in the morning air. Behind me, more snaps. Not following the same path. Circling, like whatever it was knew where I was going. I lost the game trail after maybe 2 minutes. Just thick woods. Vines, fallen logs. I tripped over a root and went down hard. My backpack flew off. The knife flew out of my hand. I scrambled on my hands and knees in the wet leaves, looking for the blade. Couldn't find it. The smell of damp earth filled my nose, mud on my lips. And then, a voice. Not shouting this time, just loud enough to hear through the trees. Running won't help. I left the knife, left the backpack, got up and ran again. My socks were soaked through. Something sharp cut the bottom of my foot. I didn't stop. I just kept pushing through the brush, scratching my arms, my neck, my face. The rustle of my own body crashing through branches. The snap of twigs under each step. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs felt like they were made of wet sand. The forest started thinning. More light. The sound of a road. Cars. I burst out of the tree line onto a gravel shoulder. A 2-lane highway. I stood there, barefoot, bleeding, shaking. No one was behind me. The trees were still. I walked along the road for maybe 10 minutes before a truck pulled over. An old Ford F-150, a couple from Ohio. They asked if I was okay. I said I'd been robbed. I don't know why I lied. When I looked back at the forest, I saw nothing. Just dark between the trunks. And then I heard one last sound before they drove me away. A single snap from the edge of the trees. The couple from Ohio drove me to the nearest ranger station. An hour, maybe more. I sat in the back of their Ford F-150, barefoot, covered in mud and scratches. They kept asking what happened. I said I got lost. I didn't know what else to say. My Nokia phone had no signal the whole way. I just stared at the blank screen. The silence in the truck was heavy. Every time we hit a bump, I flinched. I could still taste something metallic in my mouth. Not blood, just fear, like licking a battery. The Rangers took me seriously at first. 2 of them went back with an ATV. I waited in a plastic chair, drinking bad coffee. They came back 3 hours later. Found my tent, found the trampled circle, found the 6-pack of Budweiser. But no footprints except mine. No shell casings, no blood, no bodies. The cuts on the trees? Probably just bare scratches, they said. The chanting? Wind and coyotes? Coyotes don't chant, if you come out, you will die. But yeah, I didn't say that out loud. The head ranger shrugged. Local kids pulling a prank, he said. Happens sometimes. I asked about the gunshots. He said maybe a hunter in the distance. I asked about the voice that said running won't help. He just looked at me. Then he wrote something in his notebook and closed it. No news report, no investigation, nothing. I drove back to Pittsburgh in a rental car. My own Ford Explorer was still at the trailhead. I sat in the parking lot for an hour before I could start the engine. That was 12 years ago. I still don't hike alone. Not in the Appalachians, not anywhere. I go with groups. I stay on the marked paths. I check my gear 3 times. But yeah, I guess the worst part isn't the memory. The worst part is not knowing. Was it a joke? A ritual? Something else? I lie awake some nights and play the sounds over and over. The footsteps, the whisper, the silence after the last shot. So anyway, that's why I never hike alone in the Appalachians anymore. Not because I know what happened, but because I don't.